What if every problem you've ever faced was actually pointing you towards something better? What if the obstacle wasn't blocking the path, it was the path? That's the central idea behind one of the most powerful books in modern Stoic philosophy. Today we're breaking down The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday, a book that has been read by NFL coaches, special forces soldiers, CEOs, and Olympic athletes. It draws on ancient Stoic wisdom to show you a completely different way to approach resistance, failure, and adversity. Not just surviving hard times, but using them. Let's get into it. Takeaway 1. The first principle is perception. How you see the problem is often the problem itself. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Most people look at an obstacle and see a stop sign. The Stoics trained themselves to see a starting gun. Think about Thomas Edison. His lab burned to the ground when he was 67. He watched millions of dollars of work go up in smoke. And he said, "And this is real, all our mistakes are burned up. Thank God we can start fresh." Most people would be devastated. Edison saw an opportunity to rebuild better. Your perception is always a choice. The obstacle doesn't have meaning on its own. You assign it meaning. So your first task, before you do anything else, is to ask, am I seeing this clearly, or am I adding emotion and catastrophizing on top of the reality? The action step. Next time something goes wrong, write down what actually happened, just the facts. Separate the event from the interpretation, because the interpretation is where your power lies. Takeaway 2. The second principle is action. Once you've seen the obstacle clearly, you move. You don't wait for the perfect moment. You don't wait to feel ready. The Stoics believed deeply in directed, persistent action. Demosthenes is a great example. He wanted to be the greatest speaker in Athens, but he had a speech impediment, weak lungs, and no natural talent. Anyone would have quit. Instead, he put pebbles in his mouth and practiced speaking. He ran uphill to build his lungs. He shaved half his head so he'd be too embarrassed to go out and have nothing to do but practice. He became the greatest orator of ancient Greece. The obstacle didn't stop him. It gave him a reason to build skills he never would have developed otherwise. Every rejection is redirection. Every failure is information. Every dead end forces you to find a better route. What you do matters more than what happened to you. Stop waiting for the obstacle to move. Move around it, over it, under it. Just keep moving. Takeaway 3. Will is the third pillar, and it's often the most overlooked one. Perception gets you to see clearly. Action gets you moving. But will is what sustains you when action alone isn't enough. Holiday talks about this powerfully. There are some obstacles you can't fix, some losses you can't undo, a diagnosis, a death, an irreversible failure. You can't out-hustle cancer. You can't out-action grief, and that's where will comes in. The Stoics called it amor fati, love of fate, not resignation, not passivity. Active love for whatever happens, including the terrible things. It's the difference between saying, "Why is this happening to me?" and "What is this happening for?" Nick Saban, one of the greatest football coaches in history, talks about process focus over outcome focus. You can't control whether you win the game. You can control your preparation, your effort, your attitude during the game. The will is what you cultivate so that when the worst happens, and it will, you aren't destroyed. Takeaway 4. There's a concept in the book called the reverse clause. Stoics built reversals into their plans. Basically, when I try to do X, if I fail, I will interpret that failure as Y. You anticipate resistance and pre-decide how you'll respond. A startup founder might say, "When I try to raise this round, if investors pass, I'll take that as a signal to validate the product more before fundraising again." She's not setting herself up for defeat. She's removing the sting from failure so it can't paralyze her. Marcus Aurelius did this constantly. He planned for setbacks and wrote about how he'd handle them. The reason he could lead Rome through plague and war without losing his mind is because he had already emotionally prepared for those exact scenarios. Pre-decide your response to adversity. Write it down. If this doesn't work, I will. Complete that sentence, and you've just defanged most of your anxiety. Takeaway 5. Holiday spends a chapter on the idea that obstacles also slow us down in useful ways. We live in a culture that worships speed. Move fast, break things, ship it, iterate. But forced pauses, illness, setback, failure sometimes give us perspective we couldn't have gotten otherwise. Steve Jobs got fired from Apple in 1985. At the time, it was humiliating. The company he founded kicked him out. But in that wasted time, he started NeXT, bought Pixar, and completely rethought what personal computing should be. When he came back to Apple, he was a different CEO. The obstacle made him better. Cicero was exiled from Rome. He used the time to write some of the most important philosophical works in Western history. The pause wasn't wasted time, it was the most productive period of his life. When you're forced to stop, ask yourself, what can I do with this that I couldn't have done while moving? Takeaway 6. One of the most powerful chapters in the book is about following the process. Most people are fixated on the outcome. Win the championship, get the promotion, hit the number. But Holiday argues the great ones focus on process because process is the only thing you can actually control. Nick Saban famously tells his players, don't think about winning the national championship. Think about the next play. Execute the next play perfectly. Just the next play. That's the process. Win enough of those and the championship takes care of itself. When you're facing an obstacle, you don't need to figure out how to solve the entire problem. You need to figure out the next right step. Just one. Then take it. Then figure out the step after that. The mountain doesn't care about your grand plan, it just requires that you take the next step. Takeaway 7. Obstacles have a compounding property. They tend to stack on top of each other. One bad thing happens, then another, and it feels like the universe is personally targeting you. Holiday addresses this head-on. The Stoics understood that the world is indifferent. It's not out to get you. Things happen. The right response to multiple simultaneous obstacles isn't panic, it's prioritization. Which problem, if solved first, makes the others easier? Tackle that one, then move to the next. Ulysses Grant was relentlessly attacked during the Civil War by the enemy, by the press, by his own government. He kept moving. He didn't respond to every attack. He didn't collapse under the pressure. He identified the most important battle and fought it. Everything else could wait. When the problems stack up, ask, which one matters most? Then ignore everything else until that one is solved. Takeaway 8. Holiday draws on a powerful case study, the Great Chicago Fire of 1871. The entire city burned. Thousands of people lost everything. For most, that was the end. But for others, the Potters, the Marshalls, the men who would build the new Chicago, it was the beginning, because the fire cleared the way. The old, cramped, badly built city was gone. Now they had space to build something new, something better. The obstacle created the opportunity. Holiday argues that the most devastating obstacles often contain the seed of their own solution, or the seed of something far better than what was there before. But you can only see that if you approach the obstacle with the right perception. What in your life has burned down recently? What opportunity might that ashes be hiding? Takeaway 9. There's a concept called the inner citadel that comes directly from Marcus Aurelius. It's the idea that there is a place inside you that cannot be touched by external events. No one can take it from you. No circumstance can destroy it. It's your freedom to choose your response. Viktor Frankl wrote about this from Nazi concentration camps. They could take everything from him, his family, his freedom, his physical comfort, but they could not take his ability to choose his attitude. That was his inner citadel. And in that freedom, he found meaning. Holiday argues that building your inner citadel isn't something you do in crisis, it's something you build in the calm. Every time you choose the harder path when you didn't have to, you're strengthening it. Every time you practice discomfort voluntarily, you're fortifying that inner sanctuary. The obstacle doesn't just test the citadel, it reveals whether you've built it at all. Takeaway 10. The final principle ties everything together. The obstacle becomes a gift when you approach it with the Stoic framework. Not just something to endure, something to use. Holiday ends the book with a meditation on death, the ultimate obstacle. The Stoics used memento mori, the reminder of mortality, not to depress themselves, but to sharpen their appreciation of life. Every day lived well is a victory over the obstacle of death. Every problem you solve makes you more capable. Every failure you survive makes you more resilient. Every adversity you face with the right perception, the right action, and the right will makes you more of who you're meant to be. The obstacle is the path, not the detour, not the delay, the path itself. Which obstacle in your life right now is actually an invitation? Drop it in the comments, let's talk about it. If this changed how you think, subscribe. Every week we break down books that rewire how you see the world.